There is a man. Wednesday morning. He is 54 years old. He is standing in his kitchen, pouring coffee, thinking about a meeting he has at 9. His cholesterol numbers came back fine last year. He exercises on weekends. He is not overweight. He feels, by every measure he has been given, completely okay. He will have a heart attack in 11 days. And here is what haunts me about that. Not the event itself, but everything that came before it. Because his body had been sending him messages for months. Real, specific, biological messages. And he read every single one of them as something else. Stress, poor sleep, getting older. The kind of things you learn to live with because everyone around you seems to be living with them too. The kind of things you stop mentioning because you don't want to be the person who complains about being tired. This is not a story about a man who ignored obvious warning signs. This is a story about warning signs that were designed by nature to be invisible. And about a medical culture that never quite got around to teaching the rest of us how to read them. Here is what most people believe about heart attacks. They believe there will be a moment. A clear, undeniable signal. Crushing chest pain. Arm going numb. Something so loud the body cannot be ignored. And sometimes that is how it happens. But more often, far more often than cardiologists are comfortable saying out loud in a waiting room, the body has been whispering for a long time before it ever screams. The event is rarely the beginning. It is the end of a conversation that started years earlier and nobody knew how to hear. The process that leads to a cardiac event doesn't begin the morning it happens. It begins years earlier, inside the walls of your arteries, in a process so gradual and so quiet that it registers as nothing at all. What's happening is this. The inner lining of your arteries, a single layer of cells called the endothelium, begins to sustain microscopic damage. Inflammation moves in. Not the kind of inflammation you feel when you sprain an ankle. The kind you cannot feel at all. Chronic, low-grade, systemic inflammation that hums along silently while you go about your life, while you take your kids to school, while you sit through meetings, while you sleep. And as that inflammation persists, the body tries to patch the damage. It sends cholesterol, specifically LDL cholesterol, to act as a kind of biological spackle. The problem is that cholesterol doesn't just patch and leave. It accumulates. It oxidizes. It attracts immune cells that come to clean it up and then get stuck. What started as a repair job becomes a slow, hardening deposit inside the arterial wall. Doctors call it plaque. The body calls it nothing, because there are no nerve endings inside the artery wall to report back that anything is wrong. This is the biology of silence. A construction project happening in the dark, for years, with no pain, no alarm, no signal you would recognize as danger. But here is the part that should make you pause. The body is not entirely silent. It is just speaking in a language nobody taught you. And once you learn even a few words of it, certain things you have been dismissing for months start to mean something very different. Take fatigue. Not the kind that comes from a bad night of sleep and clears after coffee. The kind that sits underneath everything. The kind where you wake up and already feel like you have been awake for hours. That specific, persistent, low-grade exhaustion is one of the ways a struggling cardiovascular system communicates that it is working harder than it should to deliver oxygen to your tissues. The heart is pumping against resistance it wasn't designed to sustain indefinitely. And the whole body feels it as tiredness. Most people file it under stress, under age, under the general background noise of being a functional adult in a demanding world. They adjust their expectations downward and call it wisdom, or shortness of breath. Not gasping, just noticing, somewhere on the stairs you have climbed 1,000 times, that something feels different. That your body is working slightly harder than the situation calls for. That you need a moment at the top that you didn't used to need. This is the kind of thing people mention to their doctor almost apologetically as though they are wasting everyone's time. And sometimes they are told they need to exercise more. Which is true, but it is not the full picture. And then there is jaw tightness. This one matters and almost nobody knows it matters. The heart and the jaw share nerve pathways. When the heart is under stress, when blood supply is becoming compromised, It can refer that discomfort upward along those shared nerves into the jaw, the neck, the left shoulder. People wake up in the middle of the night with what feels like dental pain and make an appointment with their dentist. They take an ibuprofen and go back to sleep. The signal fires and nobody receives it because nobody was taught that the jaw and the heart are even in conversation. That piece of anatomy alone, if more people understood it, would send thousands of people to the right doctor years earlier than they go. And the gap between what the body is saying and what people hear, that gap is not a failure of attention. It is a failure of information. Now here is where the story gets more specific, because the mechanism isn't random. There are biological accelerants. Things that don't cause heart disease on their own, but that turn up the heat on the entire system, year after year, until the threshold is crossed. Cortisol is the one nobody talks about enough, your primary stress hormone. And in small doses, it is completely functional. It gets you through the hard morning, the difficult conversation, the deadline. But when cortisol is chronically elevated, when your nervous system is running a low-grade threat response that never fully resolves, it does specific damage to the cardiovascular system. It raises blood pressure. It promotes inflammation in the arterial walls. It contributes to insulin resistance, which further accelerates plaque formation. And the thing about chronic cortisol elevation is that it does not feel like stress after a while. It just feels like normal. It feels like Tuesday. It feels like the baseline you forgot isn't actually how baseline is supposed to feel. Poor sleep does the same kind of slow, compounding damage. During deep sleep, your blood pressure drops. Your heart rests. Your body repairs the endothelial lining, the same lining that, when left unrepaired, becomes the site of plaque formation. When that repair window is consistently cut short, when you are sleeping 6 hours, or 5, or cycling through shallow sleep that never quite reaches the restorative stages, the arterial damage accumulates faster than the body can address it. And the cruel irony is that a cardiovascular system under strain often disrupts sleep further. The two systems pulling each other in exactly the wrong direction, night after night, while the person in the bed thinks they simply aren't a good sleeper. Insulin resistance belongs in this conversation too. Not diabetes. The stage before diabetes, the stage most people never get tested for, where the body's cells have quietly stopped responding to insulin signals the way they should. Insulin resistance drives inflammation. It drives plaque formation. It is extraordinarily common and extraordinarily under-discussed. And it produces, for years, almost no symptoms that a person would recognize as metabolic. Just some fatigue, some brain fog, some weight that settles around the midsection and won't move regardless of what you try. Things that are easy to explain away, and so they get explained away, year after year, while the underlying process continues. None of these things on their own are a verdict. That is the critical point. This is not destiny. This is not your body betraying you. It is a system that has been running too hot for too long without sufficient recovery. And the remarkable thing about biological systems, the thing that gets lost in how we talk about heart disease, is that they respond to change. The endothelium can heal. Inflammation can come down. Blood pressure can normalize. Sleep, when protected with genuine consistency, restores the repair cycles the heart depends on. The arterial damage that has been accumulating does not have to keep accumulating. The trajectory is not fixed. But that change starts with something very specific. It starts with knowing what you are actually dealing with. So here is what I want you to take from this. Not a checklist, not a reason to catastrophize every moment of fatigue or every tight muscle in the night, but a reorientation. The jaw that aches at 2 in the morning deserves a mention to your doctor, and not just your dentist. The fatigue that doesn't lift after a full week of good sleep is a signal worth investigating, not explaining away. The shortness of breath on stairs you have climbed for years is information, not aging. These are not complaints, they are data. And you are allowed to treat them that way. You do not need to become hypervigilant. You need to become fluent. There is a real difference between living in fear of your body and learning to actually listen to it. One exhausts you and changes nothing. The other might change everything. The man in the kitchen on Wednesday morning didn't know any of this. He had been given cholesterol numbers and blood pressure readings and told he was fine. And by the measures available to him, he was. But the measures available to most of us are still catching up to what the biology now makes clear. Your heart has been trying to talk to you for longer than you know. And now, at least, you understand a little more of what it sounds like when it does. Pay attention to it. Tell someone when something feels different. And remember that the most important window in cardiac health is not the ambulance ride. It is every quiet, ordinary Wednesday morning before it ever comes to that.